Welcome to the fourth lecture on the theory of planned behavior. Well, we've been talking about the theory of reasoned action, but now it's the theory of planned behavior. And there should be one more lecture after this one. We're talking about the theory of planned behavior, which means we're now going to be introducing, or I'll be introducing this concept of perceived behavioral control. It's also PBC because perceived behavioral control is not easy to say. So the theory of planned behavior, just like the theory of reasoned action, includes attitudes and subjective norms. And actually, Addison, who developed theory of plan or theory of reasoned action, also is an important part of developing the theory of planned behavior. So it's not like these are contradictory theories at all. Actually, I'm not entirely sure why your book still separates them, but anyway, there we are. So we still have attitudes and subjective norms, but now we're adding in this other piece, which has to do not with how we feel about the outcomes and support, but ability. Right? So PBC includes control beliefs, and control beliefs are those things that are external to us. You might think of control beliefs as being like barriers. Is there something that we have no control over that might keep us from doing something? For instance, your financial aid running out so that you may not have control over, that is, you may not be able to extend it, and that may be a barrier to you persisting through college. Right? That would be something external. As an example, or just sort of think about how to think about this thing, blank keeps me from doing it. What keeps you from doing a certain behavior? So it's not about you. It's not I'm keeping you from doing it. Control beliefs are those things that are external to us. Others demand that we do something. The lack of resources, the lack of availability, the price of something might keep us from doing a number of things. And we score that generally from 1 to 7. Perceived power has to do with our own ability, right? I'm not persisting through college because I don't feel like I can do it, right? That's against our ability. Or really it has to do with I'm staying in college because I know how to do it. I know how to navigate college and stay in college. You might think about, for instance, issues of a healthier diet. If people feel like they don't have good access to healthier quality food, say fresh fruits and vegetables, right? That would be a control belief. I can't where I live is what we call a food desert. There's not really a store around except for like convenience stores, which are not known for their impressive selection of fresh fruits and vegetables. So access keeps you from having a better diet or a diet with more fresh fruits and vegetables. Right? Perceived power is, listen, if I have fresh fruits and vegetables, I know how to use them in my diet. I know how to incorporate them in my diet. And that would be scored from -3 to +3. Right? And just as before, you would multiply control belief by perceived power to get the P's, and you add them all up with the thing. Right? So what's the impact of PBC? Right? How is this different from attitudes and subjective norms? Well, if we think about something like eating organic foods, a person may think it's great to do it. That'd be an assessment of attitudes, and they feel a lot of support for doing it. That'd be their subjective norms. But if it's too expensive, now we see why PBC is expensive, or why PBC is very important here, right? Because the person sees it doing it's a good thing, they feel a lot of support for doing it, but they don't feel they have the ability, right? Perceived behavioral control. They don't feel they actually have control, or how much they actually can control the behaviors they engage in, or at least their perception of doing so, right? So stopping smoking. A person may think that smoking is bad for them. People might know that there's much support among the people who love them for them to quit smoking, but they might feel like it's too hard. Therefore, they don't have enough perceived behavioral control to actually change their behavior. So let's return to one of the old examples we've been using, condoms, right? And I changed up the wording here a little bit because you're allowed to do that, right? A control belief would be access to condoms is 1, inconvenient, 7, convenient. Right, that would be, that's right. This is an issue for teens, for instance. How easy is it for a teen to be able to go and to purchase condoms? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't have enough sort of free time where they're not with their parents to go to a store that sells them, or the school doesn't provide them, or their parents don't provide them, or guardians don't provide them, right? So the access to condoms might be inconvenient. And so the person says, under perceived power, if I don't have a condom, I will avoid having sex, strongly disagree, and strongly agree. So the person says that access to condoms is inconvenient, that's a 1, right? And they say if I don't have a condom, I'll avoid having sex a 3. That means their total score there would be a 3, which is actually pretty good, but it's not strongly supportive of condom use because what we'd like to see is for there to be good access to condoms. But again, we're measuring what's the barrier like, and when there's a barrier, how much power do you feel like you have? If we're looking at recycling, right, I can easily find a recycling bin for water bottles. Never or always. Right, you ever been like an amusement park or someplace you have to like carry your bottle around with you because there's no place to recycle it? And then we ask the question, well, if you can find it, will you recycle it? Because then we know that if it's you could always if you can always find the place to recycle it, and if you can find it, you always will recycle it. That would be a 21. Very supportive of it, right? I have to say PBC is one that is trickier to figure out, and if you were to read any of the theorization and the research on it, you'll see that yeah, it's a tricky one, and there's a lot of debate about why it doesn't seem like it would work, but in fact, when you run the numbers, it works really well. And that's the key takeaway. These two pieces, control belief and perceived power, may not seem like they'd work together well, but the research finds consistently they really do. If we return to the example now of texting and driving, and we have expectation, people's expectation that you will return all their text messages and do so quickly. If we have the behavior of pulling over, like before you send a text, you pull over, and if we have traffic, right? Traffic sometimes may, affect whether or not you. So the question is, how does the presence of traffic or its absence affect you? Right? In terms of control belief, it might be a person says that they feel that others strongly, because we're looking at what behaviors support texting and driving, says to 7. People are like, yeah, there's a strong, I get the strong impression that people expect me to return a text message as soon as I can, even if I'm driving, right? A control belief is that pulling over, actually in this case, pulling over, because we're looking at behaviors that are supportive of texting and driving. If pulling over gets a 7, that means it's hard. How hard is it to pull over during, or pull over during sex? How hard is it to pull over when you're driving to send a text? If it's really hard, it's a 7, right? And traffic. And then here for traffic, for how does traffic impact them, I just put it as a 3. So under perceived power, it's a 3, a 3, and a 1, right? That in terms of there's an expectation, if people expect it, the 3 from -3 to +3 is, yeah, if they expect it, I'm going to do it, right? From -3 to +3 is that if it's hard to pull over, right, I'm not gonna, right? And the -1 has to do with that if there are a problem with traffic, I probably won't text and drive. When we look at all of this, we see that the expectations on others that you will return a text message as soon as possible is off the chart strong. Well, I shouldn't say off the charts, it's the top of the chart. That pulling over is difficult means that you're just that much more likely actually to send a text because it's just too hard to pull over, right, to send a text. And that traffic only slightly discourages you. This is super depressing, right? It means that there is a lot of support here. Notice when I added those things up that 21 and 21 is 42, minus the 3 is 39. Yeah, all of this is strongly, especially if you look at the past scores, very strongly suggestive of you texting and driving. So what do we do with this information? Well, just as before, we're going to identify areas for change, right? Others expect me to reply to text immediately. Let's say the person gave it as a 3. And for perceived power, it was a little bit different than I did on the other screen. I get that. And for perceived power, the person says, people expect an immediate reply. I will text back even if I'm driving. They're like, yeah, absolutely, I will. One of the things we can do is change their barriers to control. Get them to look at it differently. To say, actually, you know what? People may not expect it of you. Or more importantly, if somebody expects it of you, it doesn't have to control you, right? You do have control because you're saying is, they're controlling me. What if you made a choice for yourself, right? That would be changing the barrier to control. And likewise, we could change a person's sense of power, right? If they expect immediate reply, I'll do it. You know, you are the one who actually sends the text. You get to make that decision, right? So again, we go and we modify those. If we're looking at the theory of reasoned action in sum, and again, theory of reasoned action, that was the previous version of theory we just looked at. We said attitude toward behavior and subjective norm form behavioral intention, and that indicates behavior. Well, now, in the theory of planned behavior, it's saying that we have attitude toward behavior and subjective norm, as well as perceived behavioral control. All three of those affect our behavioral intention, and that is what directs our behavior. Now, what do we do with all of that? I'm going to talk about that in the last lecture.